Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to my channel, Gardening Cold Spring Harbor. Welcome back to my home. Welcome back to Long Island, New York, Gardening Zone 7A. Today is finally the day that I get to dig up my dahlia tubers and prepare them for proper winter storage. We have sprouted my dahlia tubers together with you guys this past spring season. I also shared with you guys exactly how I plant and grow my dahlias from tubers. I do have those videos still available on my gardening channel for those of you who are interested in seeing them. Today I'm going to show you exactly how I dig up my dahlia tubers over here and how I prepare them for proper winter storage so that my dahlias will overwinter correctly and be ready for planting again come next spring season. Dahlias are native to Mexico, which means that they're only cold hardy up to zone 9. So if you live in zones 9 and below, and your ground freezes in the winter season, then you should always dig up and store your dahlias before the first frost hits the area in which you live. So join me today as I will show you the correct way to dig up and store dahlia tubers throughout the winter season. For those of you looking for that online gardening channel that offers tips, tricks, easy yet proven gardening advice to take your home gardens to that next level. Don't go anywhere, guys. Stick around with me today. Start with going below this video and clicking the subscribe button. If you are enjoying the content of my videos and never want to miss yet another gardening video, don't forget to click the bell icon as well. YouTube will send you notifications every single time I'll upload a new garden video. Now come with me. Let's dig up my dahlia tubers together with you today. So how do we know when is the right time to dig up our dahlia tubers? Guess what, guys? Mother Nature has a way of alerting you, of letting you know that now is the correct and the right time to dig up our dahlia tubers. So what does Mother Nature do? You will start seeing your dahlia flowers not only browning, they're gonna start to get shriveled up, they're going to start to droop down. You're going to see your dahlia foliage starting to turn to mush, starting to change color from nice green to brown, followed by black. When you see your dahlia plant flowers, stems, and foliage starting to look like this, or even like this, this is Mother Nature's way of letting you know that your dahlia tubers are ready to be dug up. No need to rush, guys. Never rush when it comes to digging up our dahlia tubers. Why? Dahlia tubers should always still stay in the ground at least through one first frost. Not freeze, guys. Frost. Why? Because that first frost will help make our dahlia tubers stronger and will help set those sets of eyes that our tubers need for next year's growth. Before we go any further, I want to make it very clear that frost is not the same thing as freeze. A lot of us get the terms frost and freeze confused. Some of us think that it's exactly the same thing. No, guys. What is meant by the term frost? Frost is anywhere between 36 to 32 degrees Fahrenheit. Freeze entails 32 degrees Fahrenheit or below. So when we're saying frost, to allow our dahlias to go through at least one official frost, we are talking temperatures in the low to mid 30s. We should never allow our dahlias and our dahlia tubers to stay in the ground during freezing temperatures, 32 degrees Fahrenheit and below, will kill off your dahlia tubers. For those of you who are lucky enough to live in warmer climates, warmer gardening zones, say Florida, California, zones 9 and above, you guys are lucky enough to keep your dahlia tubers growing as perennials all year long. So for those of you living in warmer climates, no need to dig up your dahlia tubers whatsoever. Lucky you guys. Again, guys, when it comes to dahlia tubers, don't rush the digging and the storing process. Allow your dahlias to stay in the ground as long as possible through at least first official frost. After the first official frost hits, I like to give it at least 10 to 14 extra days before I start to dig up my dahlia tubers and to prepare them for storage. Digging up our dahlia tubers is very easy, actually, guys. The process is relatively easy, but if done correctly and at the correct time, you can have your dahlia tubers growing and blooming for you for years and years to come. So what is the first step? The first step is to wait again until our dahlias start to die back, start to look all shriveled up, the foliage starts to get mushy to the touch. Again, if this happens to your dahlia's foliage, the stem, the flowers, it is absolutely fine, guys. Yes, the foliage is dying off, yet the magic is still happening below the soil level. Your tubers are still absolutely fine. In fact, the colder temperatures are helping the tubers set those eyes that the tubers will need and use to grow and bloom flowers for us next year. Step number 1, get pruning shears or scissors of some sort. We have to cut the foliage back. So let's get started. Now, we want to leave at least 2 to 3 inches of the stem above the soil level. The rest, here I'm going to remove the support stake that I had on my dahlia, because as you could see, it's a very, very tall plant. Here you go. I'm going to remove the support stake as our dahlia no longer will need it after this day. So now we're going to, so this variety was the Pine Lance Princess variety. I still have the tag over here. I placed this tag next to the dahlias at the time of planting. So now I'm going to leave about 3 inches above the root, the soil level, and I'm going to cut off the rest. There you go. So this, of course, we will discard off. So now this is going to stay in the ground for the next few minutes. I'm going to do exactly the same thing with the rest of my dahlias. Leave about 3 inches of stem above the ground level. The rest we can get rid of. Again, remove all of your stakes and all of your supports as your dahlias are done for this growing season. Like so. Again, guys, the process is relatively simple. The first step is very important, though. It's It's very easy, yet it's crucial. I like to get rid of all the foliage that I cut off and the stems as well, because I do not want to harbor any diseases. So all of this foliage that we have cut off today will be thrown out. I am not going to compost any of this foliage because, again, I don't want any pests or diseases to over harbor in the winter season. I am all done with removing the stakes and supports from my dahlias. Over here you could see how much foliage and spent flowers I was able to cut. I will be discarding of this accordingly. Again, I don't want to harbor pests or disease. And I wanted to quickly show you what is left of my dahlias. You could see the stalks that still remain in the ground. Again, the sizing and the thickness of the stalks will vary depending on the variety of dahlias that you're growing. So the taller, larger dahlia varieties will have thicker stalks that almost look like tubes, straws, because you could see the hollow center. The smaller, shorter dahlia varieties will have thinner, skinnier stalks, as you could see over here. So now that we cut off the foliage and the spent flowers, the next step is to dig up our tubers. To dig up our dahlia tubers, we will need a shovel. If you're growing more dahlias, you might need a larger size shovel. For me, a hand shovel will do just fine, as the area in which I grow my dahlias is not that large. I do not have that many dahlia varieties growing in my home garden. If you don't have a shovel or afraid to use a shovel, you can use another digging tool like this one. This one's a good example of a digging tool. Now guys, if you're using a shovel, you must be very careful when digging up a tuber. You have to dig very, very slowly and very carefully, so you won't cut into a tuber, so you won't sever your tuber. Because if you cut or the tuber or damage it in any way during the digging process, that tuber will rot during the winter months and you won't be able to overwinter it successfully. So you must be very, very careful if you're using a shovel to dig up your dahlia tubers. Another reason to consider using a pitchfork or a smaller size hand shovel when digging up our tubers is if you have a drip system set up in that garden zone where your tubers are planted. Because if you're using a larger shovel, you might also be risking cutting into the drip line system. So today I will be using a smaller hand shovel because, as you could see, I do have a drip line system set up and I can't afford to cut into the tubers or the drip system for that matter. So I will be using a smaller shovel to dig up my tubers today. Because of that risk of damaging our tubers when we're using a shovel to dig them up, many gardeners prefer to use a pitchfork instead when digging up their dahlia tubers. Pitchfork is another option, and indeed it's a much safer option when it comes to digging up very delicate dahlia tubers. Another reason to consider using a pitchfork or a smaller size hand shovel when digging up our tubers is if you have a drip system set up in that garden zone where your tubers are planted. Because if you're using a larger shovel, you might also be risking cutting into the drip line system. So today I will be using a smaller hand shovel because, as you could see, I do have a drip line system set up and I can't afford to cut into the tubers or the drip system for that matter. So I will be using a smaller shovel to dig up my tubers today. When digging up my dahlia tubers, I always move at least 12 inches away from the main stem before I start to dig. Why? Because dahlia tubers do tend to move, to shift underneath the soil, and dahlia tubers, as the dahlia plant grows and matures, they do tend to multiply. Say you planted one tuber of a certain dahlia variety in this past spring season. Now, as your plant grew and matured, don't be surprised if you dig up multiple tubers of the dahlia variety. The digging process is very, very easy. The key is not to dig too close to the stems and never attempt to pull our dahlias out, the tubers out, using the stems. The stems are very frail. They're very delicate. And if you attempt to grab your dahlia plant by the stems to pull out the tubers, you can and most likely will snap off the tubers at the necks. Remember, the stem is connected to the tuber via something called a neck. So if you snap off the neck part of the tuber will no longer be viable next growing season. So never ever think, even if your soil is dry and loose, that you should pull out your tubers by grabbing the stalks of your dahlia plant, as you are putting very, very high risk of damaging your tubers, of killing your tubers by snapping the neck. Here you go. You could see how many tubers this particular dahlia variety has. Again, based on the sizing of the stalk, this was a larger, taller dahlia variety. So now that I have them out, I'm going to gently attempt to wiggle the tubers out. Look at the massive root system, guys. Again, take your time. Be very, very delicate. Here you go, guys. Our first tuber is out. Look at the huge, huge root system. Again, guys, I planted single tubers this past spring season. And look how much these tubers have multiplied. This is the same dahlia plant that I planted this past spring. And again, I have those videos still available on my gardening channel. I show you exactly how I pre-sprout my dahlia tubers prior to planting them in my home garden. For those of you who are interested in seeing how I pre-sprout my dahlia tubers inside, indoors, in my green room, and then how I transplant pre-sprouted tubers into my home garden, check out those videos as well. Take a look at the sizing of these tubers, guys. Look at this. Some are large. Some are absolutely huge. And look how many new, skinnier tubers this dahlia variety has grown for me this year. You could see that these are still skinnier on the smaller side versus larger, more mature tubers over here. Again, guys, this is a clear example of how our dahlia tubers multiply throughout the growing process throughout the years. I always like to have a basket or a crate with me as I'm digging up my dahlia tubers, because I use this basket not only to, store the tubers while I'm digging the rest up, but also you could see all the holes that this basket has, which is perfect and ideal for when I will be washing off the dirt from my tubers, which will be in a few minutes here. So after I am done digging up all of my dahlia tubers, I will be using a garden hose, very gently though, slowly, to wash off the dirt that still remains on my dahlia tubers that I wasn't able to shake off. Now say you're digging up your tubers and one of the tubers happens to separate from the rest. How do you know if you should keep the tuber that's separated or to discard of it? The answer to the question is very simple, guys. Always look at your tubers and make sure that the tuber still has a neck. So you could see how the tuber is wider on the bottom and there it narrows at this point right over here on top. So this little piece on top of a dahlia tuber is something called a neck. So if the tuber separates with the neck still attached, go on right ahead and keep this tuber as well. If you see that the tuber separated without a neck piece, that tuber is no longer viable. Here I have yet another dahlia variety that I had growing and blooming for me this year. Let's take a look at my label. So this is the Cambridge dahlia variety. Again, guys, I highly recommend tagging and labeling your dahlia tubers during the pre-sprouting process, during the planting process, as well as before the winter storage, as all dahlia tubers do look exactly the same or very, very alike. And you do want to know which dahlia tubers are which. Another reason to tag and label our tubers is so that you know which varieties you will be planting where. You know that dahlias varieties do vary in sizing, in the height. So we never want to plant shorter dahlia varieties behind taller dahlia varieties. We want to make sure that we plant taller dahlias with taller dahlias, shorter dahlia with shorter dahlia, as we do not want those to compete for sunlight. So let's dig up this dahlia tuber over here. So again, we're gonna move about a foot away from our dahlia. Why? Because tubers do shift and do multiply below the soil surface during the growing process. You never know how close or how far away those tubers are right now at the time of digging, and we do not want to cut into them or sever them. Take it easy, guys. Take it slow. Look, I'm already starting to see a tuber right over here. So good thing that I took that many steps back away from the stem, because look how far this tuber's coming out. If I would have dug in close to the stem, guess what, guys? I would have cut into this tuber. Sometimes you can feel what's happening there. Here you go. Let's see if I can gently reveal the tubers to you guys. Take a look how far this side is going. Look, 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 guys. I just want to show you exactly what I was just talking about. The tubers are not necessarily all short and round. Some are much, much longer and more elongated in shape. Some stem in one direction, some stem in the opposite. So we must always, always be very cautious all 360 degrees around. Here you go. Take a look, guys. Take a look at these tubers. So this dahlia variety, again, this was the Cambridge variety. I planted one tuber. I dug up two tubers. But look at the length of this tuber. Look how long it is. So my dahlia was planted right over here. But look how far that second tuber was going. Look how long that root system is. Here is yet another dahlia variety that I just dug up. And I wanted to show you guys something, to point something out. Again, I planted one tuber. Look how many tubers I was able to pull out. So this variety multiplied as well. So here, let's take a look at the end of our tubers. So the top, this portion over here, is called the neck. So if this portion gets broken off or severed into during the digging process, your dahlia tubers will not survive and will not overwinter properly. Now, this is the other end of the tubers. So the root end. Say you pulled out your tubers and one of the tubers happened to break off on the root end. This is a clear example over here. So now you might be wondering, what's going to happen to your tubers now? Will they rot? Should I throw them out? Will they make it through the winter season? Will they grow and bloom again? Yes, guys, they will grow and they will bloom for you again next year. If that root end piece breaks off for whatever reason, your tuber is still absolutely fine. As long as the neck piece is safe and intact, your dahlia tuber will still be absolutely fine. The gardening task is coming along. Here's Julia.
Hey,
She decided to join me here and help me out as I'm digging up our dahlia tubers. You could see over here, the ground has been dug up. Julia has almost a basket full of dahlia tubers inside. We still have a few more tubers to dig up on this side, but the process is definitely coming along. Thank you to my little helper over there. The basket is quickly filling up with dahlia tubers. Here is another example of a dahlia tuber that's separated from the original plant. As I was digging it up, you could see what the separation happened right over here. Again, guys, this is another example of a tuber that still is salvageable and viable. So I'm touching the tuber and it's nice and firm and hard to the touch. And it did separate, but it separated with the neck still intact. Again, the skinny little portion on top of the tuber is called a neck. So if you happen to have a tuber that's separated from the original mother plant and the neck still remains intact and attached, do not discard of this tuber, guys. Nothing wrong with it. And yes, when you will plant it next spring, whether you are pre-sprouting them in plastic containers indoors, whether you plant it directly in the soil of your home garden, this tuber will grow and form a new dahlia plant for you. As you're still actively digging up your dahlia tubers and placing them into a box, a container, or basket of some sort, be very careful, guys, as to how you handle the tubers while placing them into this container or basket. Don't rush. Don't be too harsh. Be very careful. Be very delicate. Again, you just took all that time to dig up the tubers. You were careful, you were meticulous, and now you do not want to throw your tubers. You do not want to place them roughly, as this rough placement can also hurt or damage the tubers, can snap them at the neck level, hence killing them. So be very, very mindful of how you're handling the tubers at the time of placing them into this basket or a container. One more very important gardening tip to note when it comes to digging up dahlia tubers. If you're digging up your tubers using a shovel, whether it's a large size shovel, hand shovel, always hold the shovel straight, like so, when digging up your tubers. Again, at least 12 inches away and straight. Never dig at an angle of any sort, because then you are risking cutting into the tubers. Position your shovel always straight. when attempting to dig up dahlia tubers. Here is another thing I wanted to show you guys. So here is yet another dahlia tuber that I dug up. You could see where the original tuber was, which I planted. However, apparently something happened in the ground there. So the original tuber started to rot and disintegrate beneath the soil level. But that's also absolutely okay. Why? Because it grew more additional large size, huge size tubers for us. So if you guys happen to see this, it's also absolutely fine. You have plenty new healthy tubers growing from this stem. So salvage tubers like these as well. If you find one that has disintegrated yet grew additional tubers for you, do not discard of it. Save it for next year's planting. Here we are, guys. I am all done digging up my dahlia tubers. As you could see for yourself, I have a whole basket full of dahlia tubers. Once you are done digging up your tubers, try to do your best to shake off any excess dirt or soil from the tubers. If you feel that there's just too much soil, too much dirt, and you cannot shake it off safely without damaging the tuber, there's another option for you guys. You can use a garden hose to thoroughly rinse off your tubers. However, when using a garden hose, also be very careful. Try to do your best not to puncture the tubers, as this can and will cause them to rot over the winter months. I will not be rinsing off my tubers with a hose today. Why? Because as you could see, once the tubers start to dry, you could see that they are relatively clean. So here are the ones that I dug up earlier. You could see how nice and clean they are. So these are the ones that I dug up later. You could still see the wet soil dirt on them, but it's okay. As they start to dry up, they are clean enough. So I do not want to expose them to any more moisture than I already have. So I'm going to keep them at this without hosing them off this time around. But if your dahlias have more dirt or soil than this after you dug them up, you should rinse them off with a hose, or you can bring them inside and rinse them off in your sink, whatever is more convenient for you guys. Now that you're done either shaking off the dirt or rinsing it off with a hose or in your home sink, what is the next step? The next step is to closely examine our dahlia tubers for any sign of damage, disease, or rot. So how do we do this? We closely look at our tubers and we feel each tuber. The tuber must be brown in color, like so, and must be firm and hard to the touch. It should never be shriveled, mushy. There should not be anything coming out of our tubers in a form of moisture, pussing, mold. So our tubers should look nice and clean and be very, very hard and firm to the touch. If the tuber is wrinkled, shriveled, mushy, soft, if you're able to touch it and your finger is able to go into the tuber, that is a sign of rot, and the tuber must be cut off and discarded immediately. You can also decide to divide your tubers at this point as well if your tubers are showing signs of eye growth and development. So what are eyes on our dahlia tubers? The eyes of dahlias are a set of cells that produce next season's plants and blooms. They almost look like pimples, little tiny pimples on our dahlia tubers. It's okay if at this point in time you cannot recognize the eyes or you do not see the eyes. In fact, sometimes it's much easier to wait until spring, as in the spring season, the eyes are more visible and recognizable. Now, if you do not see a set of eyes just yet, don't panic. You could still overwinter your dahlia tubers, as again, in the spring, the eyes are always more visible, and it's absolutely fine to wait till spring to divide your dahlia tubers. So when do you divide them? When they start to multiply and form huge clumps of tubers like this. But again, if you do not see the eyes just yet in the fall, wait, don't rush. Wait till spring to do the division process. After you have inspected your dahlia tubers for any sign of rot or disease, what is the next step? The next step is to allow them to dry. Depending on the humidity level, depending on the tuber size and the dahlia varieties, as well as the air temperatures. This can take anywhere from a few days to over a week. So why should you dry them prior to placing them in storage? The drying process helps cure the dahlia tubers so they can overwinter better and safer. Try not to skip any of these steps, guys. Also try not to rush. Why? Because dahlia tubers can be enjoyed for years and years to come without having to spend any more money at a garden center or nursery. However, you should handle them properly in the fall season. This proper care and handling in the fall will ensure that you can enjoy your dahlia tubers and beautiful flower blooms for many years to come. When you're drying your dahlia tubers, you can either dry them on a cloth or a blanket of some sort by spreading them out evenly, or you can use a basket with air holes in it throughout the entire basket, because again, you want the air to circulate while you're drying your dahlia tubers. You do not want to place them in a container that has no air circulation. You do not want to overcrowd the tubers, as again, all of the moisture will not dry out, hence causing the tubers to start rotting. The key to overwintering dahlia tubers is to make sure that they stay in a dry, dark, cool place over the winter months. So where can you store your dahlia tubers? In a garage, in an unheated basement, in a cellar, or a shed of some sort. Any of these options will work just fine. Just make sure that the area where you're storing your dahlia tubers over the winter months will have a temperature above 32 degrees Fahrenheit, meaning that that area will not freeze. Ideal temperature for storing dahlia tubers over the winter month should be around 50 degrees Fahrenheit. So the location which you choose to store your dahlia tubers in should never ever dip below the freezing mark, which is 32 degrees Fahrenheit. So the next question that may arise is, what can and should we store our dahlia tubers in for the cold winter month to overwinter them? You could choose anything from a milk crate to a box, even paper bags. You could see I'm already storing and overwintering some of my plants over here in my garage in paper bags. Nothing fancy that needs to be purchased. You can reuse paper bags that you get from grocery stores as well. One more very important tip I want to share with you guys when it comes to dahlia tuber storage over the cold winter months. So the container that you choose doesn't really matter. Again, it could be an old cardboard box, a shoe box, a milk crate, a paper bag that you have laying in your garage from a previous grocery shopping trip. Now, what does matter, what's really important, is how you place and position your tubers during this storage phase. You should never ever leave your tubers stacked one on top of the other. as this can and most likely will cause the tubers to rot. You should always use either vermiculite or even wood shavings to separate your tubers. I personally like to store my dahlia tubers in paper bags, and I lay a nice diligent layer of vermiculite between each layer of my tubers. This one I purchased from Amazon, and I will link it in the comments section below. Vermiculite is a great product, guys. I actually have a video on my gardening channel where I talk about the uses of vermiculite when it comes to gardening. Even the picture on the package depicts dahlia flowers. Vermiculite is an excellent organic product. It is lightweight, sterile, and an absorbent mineral with lots of uses. I use vermiculite for seed startings, to store bulbs, to lighten soil, and it's an excellent product when it comes to moisture retention as well. Vermiculite is not expensive at all. Again, I got mine from Amazon, and I will link it in the comment section below. But I know that for those of you who don't have access to Amazon or a computer, they do sell vermiculite in garden centers such as Home Depot and Lowe's as well. For those of you, my fellow gardeners, who do not want to use vermiculite for whatever reason, whether you cannot get access to it, whether you cannot afford it, whether you don't like it, no pressure at all, guys. You can use something as simple as natural wood shavings for your dahlia tuber storage as well. Again, remember to lay a good amount of vermiculite on the first layer. Place your tubers evenly so they're not overcrowding each other, followed by another layer of vermiculite between each layer of your dahlia tubers. This will help with moisture retention and will keep your dahlia tubers safe over the winter months. One more very useful gardening tip when it comes to storing dahlia tubers: don't forget to check on them every so often throughout the entire winter season, guys. Just because you place them in a cool, dark area with vermiculite or wood shavings doesn't mean that they don't need your attention still. I always check on my dahlia tubers every week or so. I just open the bag or the container in which I'm storing them and feel for firmness on them. If you start to see that your dahlia tubers are no longer firm, say they're starting to shrivel up, that most likely means that they're lacking that moisture. So what do you do then? You add more moistened vermiculite to that storage container in which you're storing your dahlia tubers. Don't let that vermiculite drip wet. Moisten it. Let extra moisture drip out and surround your dahlia tubers with that moistened vermiculite. This will help rehydrate your dahlia tubers, and they're good to go for storage once again. This is it for this video, you guys. Thank you so much for joining me here on this gorgeous, sunny, mild fall day in Long Island, New York, Zone 7A. In today's video, I showed you exactly how I dig up and prepare my dahlia tubers for winter storage. I know that there are so many videos and comments and suggestions out there, but I thought that I should share with you how I dig up my dahlia tubers and prepare them for winter storage. I have used this method for years and years and always had great success. For those of you who enjoyed today's video, if you found the content of today's video to be useful, helpful, informative in any way, show me that support by clicking thumbs up below. Leave your comments in the comments section as well. Let me know, do you grow dahlias in your home garden? If so, what gardening zone do you live in? Do you have to dig up your dahlia tubers and prepare them for winter storage? If so, what steps do you follow when it comes to digging up and storing your dahlia tubers. For those who haven't yet subscribed to my gardening channel, Gardening Cold Spring Harbor, don't wait any longer, guys. Super easy for you to do, yet super pleasing and rewarding to me, knowing that you guys watch my videos, that you enjoy the content of my videos, and that you find my gardening videos to be helpful, useful, and informative in your own home gardening. Be healthy, guys. Happy, especially with all these fall viruses going around, and be well, each and every single one of you. And happy gardening, guys, and I'll see you again in my new upcoming gardening videos. Bye, guys.